Before we start, here are the colors that you need. Alright, so we are now on day 14, and for this category, it's just a combination of flowers that you like the most in the challenge. So you can definitely create your own floral composition or you can follow this project. Alright, before we start, let me give you a brief overview of our painting for today. Okay, so it's going to be a combination of ranunculus and larkspur. And we are going to start first with the ranunculus. We're going to start with two flowers that are diagonally across each other. And then on the lower right side, we're going to paint something simpler. It's going to be a simple 5-petal flower. So I'm doing a sort of a summer color palette. So I wanted some oranges and yellows and also a little bit of blue. Okay, and then we are going to move forward with the larkspur. So you'll notice that we are also combining flowers that have different floral shapes and also different sizes. Okay, so just to complete this look, I just felt like I needed to add some more neutral flowers. So I added some daisies. And then next, we're just going to layer the flowers just to give it more depth. Alright, so we're almost done. We're just gonna add a few more finishing touches. Okay, so let's start painting our project. So here I have some of the projects that we painted. This is the ranunculus and the larkspur, and I just thought that they would look great in a bouquet because they are also complementary colors, and usually it creates a very striking combination in a floral bouquet. So feel free to use flowers that you like the most in the challenge to include in this bouquet so that you can make it your own. So right here, I am just trying to sketch the composition on a scrap paper. You can also do this. So I think we want two main flowers that are diagonally across each other. And then just to change the shape, I'm going to add the 5-petal flower. It's going to be simpler. And then of course we're going to add some larkspur. I'm going to add it towards the top because larkspur is a small flower. We can add that sort of like a filler in a bouquet. So when you're doing a composition, you should also think about the function of the flower in a composition. If it's going to be the focal flower or the main flower, or will it be the secondary flower, or maybe it will be fillers in a bouquet. Alright, let's start painting. I'm going to grab sap green, or you can also use greenish yellow, and then also permanent yellow light. So we're going to start with the center of the ranunculus and going to make a crescent moon shape. And then I'm going to paint some small strokes all around it. Next, let's grab our yellow and just using the tip of the brush, create some curved strokes all around it. Make sure you have spaces in between your strokes. Alright, so when you're happy with the size, we can move on to the yellow orange. Okay, so I am specifically using different colors just because in the reference photo, I noticed that there's like a gradient color in the ranunculus. So there's green in the center, then it turns yellow, and then it turns yellow-orange towards the outer part of the flower. Now, using the tip of the brush, we're going to paint some letter C strokes or these curved strokes that are hugging the center. And now I'm going to rinse my brush. We're going to proceed to painting bigger petals. So as I'm painting this, I'm also pressing my brush even more. And now I'm going to grab a little bit of vermilion. So I'm adding this just to make the colors look more intense. Alright, let's rinse our brush again, and I am going to make the petals bigger. So you can see I'm really pressing my brush onto the paper, creating these curved strokes. So the outer petals are gonna look softer. So here is the reference photo. So I really wanted to create some nice loose petals on the outer part of this ranunculus. Okay, so we are going to leave it as is for now, let it dry. Let's move on to the second flower, and I'm doing the same process. So we're going to paint a crescent moon or a comma, and then now I'm going to add some thin green strokes all around it. So the more thin strokes that you paint, the fluffier it looks or the more intricate it looks, because ranunculus has a lot of layers of petals, and this is one way to illustrate that. Okay, now I'm rinsing my brush, and I am just going to add a more intense color. This is vermilion, and using the side of the brush and just painting these letter C strokes or curve strokes. And you'll notice that I'm adding more volume towards the bottom part, and that's because this is a ranunculus that is on its side. So you'll notice that the second ranunculus looks more oval, and again that's because it is on its side, while the first flower that we painted is top facing, so it's more round in shape. Okay, so let's move on to the five-petal flower, and I just mixed yellow with a little bit of gouache, so you'll notice this color looks a bit like pastel yellow. So as I was painting this, I just felt like I needed to tone down the color. I have this really bright ranunculus, and I wanted just a pale five-petal flower. Alright, so we're just going to keep it pretty loose and use the side of the brush to create the broad strokes. Now I'm going to use burnt sienna and add it in the center while it's still wet. So for the larkspur, we're going to use verditer blue and also ultramarine blue. So we can try to prepare that on our palette and just mix the color. We want it to be a little bit light. Okay, so I'm using verditer blue, and I am creating some small petals. So you can press your brush and move it up and down to create these organic strokes. And I'm going to switch to ultramarine blue. So it's going to look nicer if you switch between maybe two or three different blues. You can also use a thicker verditer blue. So you can see this color that I'm using is more opaque. Right, so you'll notice that I painted a really faint color in this area because some of the blues are quite intense, and I wanted to balance that. With this technique, your flowers will not look flat. Okay, so let's grab some green and just add a few dots in the center of the flowers. Right, so we can now add some stems sticking out and also some leaves. Lightly drag your brush to create these long slender leaves, just like what we use here in our project in day 2. So you have really come a long way from day 2. We are now on day 14. Alright, so we can mix sap green with a little bit of burnt umber. I'm going to put some stems in between the main flowers. You can see those small white gaps. Usually we forget to add some greens in between, but by adding these small sticks, it's going to really make the flowers pop up even more. It's going to separate the flowers from each other too. Okay, so this is for the bottom left part of the bouquet. We're going to paint some small round shapes using permanent yellow deep, and this is going to be our small daisies. So adding daisies in a bouquet really makes it more dainty and more elegant. Now for the petals, we're going to use paint spray. So let's dilute this in a lot of water. So we want it to be really, really light in color. And going to use this to paint the petals using a small brush. So just try to press and drag your brush and create these beautiful strokes that are facing in like different angles or different directions. So sometimes it will touch the yellow center. It's going to bleed into the petals, and that's okay. I think these are also happy accidents. It's going to look nice anyway, so it's okay. Now I'm gonna add an oval shape here. So this is a daisy that's facing on its side. So if you paint around center, that's gonna be a daisy that's top facing. Okay, so try to add a darker color towards the edges of the center, but it was too wet. So now I'm just gonna try to add some small thin lines. Just add some stems sticking out, some leaves. Okay, so this is what it looks like from the top. So our bouquet is almost finished except for some more leaves. I'm going to mix sap green and burnt umber. So we're just really creating some nice pointy leaves and also some dancing stems. So if you notice, whenever I add a stem, it's always a little bit curved just to add some movement. So another tip is to add the color of the flower to your green leaves. So I added some orange here to my green, and you'll notice that the color of the leaves still complements the entire bouquet. So once the flowers are already dry, you can grab a darker color. This is just vermilion, or you can use yellow orange, and then paint some nice thin strokes on top of this flower. But at the same time, make sure that you limit your strokes. Okay, so I'm gonna make broader strokes towards the outer part of this flower, and that's okay. So if you'll notice, this ranunculus looks flat, and we're going to add volume by creating these thin lines that will mimic those layers of petals. So make sure that the color you're using is about 2 shades darker than the base flower. So I will also go over the larkspur, grab some blue and just paint on top of some of the petals just to give it more volume and also add a little bit of color. Alright, so it was difficult to add some shadow in this daisy because it's too small. So I'm just gonna put a dark ring of dots using burnt umber. And next we can grab some indigo and just maybe add some contrast in the center of the larkspur. I'm also gonna add a little bit in the 5-petal flower just to give it more depth. Alright, try to step back and look at your painting. So here I noticed that we need to balance the blues here in this painting. So I'm adding a little bit more in the areas at the bottom. So I'm just pressing my brush to create these small petal-like strokes. And it doesn't have to really look like a real flower. So we're just going to add some fillers. And what I love to do is I just like dabbing my brush onto the paper to create these gestural strokes. It will look like small flowers. It's also a great way to fill in a small white gap. So here I'm just adding some more leaves near the yellow flower because I needed to pop up some more. So I'm just trying to frame the shape of the flower. You can also go back in, add another layer of petals on the daisy using Paints Gray. And I think that's it. Congratulations for finishing your project for today.